Hello, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, and the public. Adam Smith, City Manager's Office, here with a presentation on the recategorization of American Rescue Plan Act projects according to the final rule issued by U.S. Treasury. The recommendation is that the City Council, one, recategorize 15.7 million of ARPA projects into the replacing lost public sector revenue category, according to the final rule issued by the U.S. Treasury. Two, make final decisions on remaining ARPA projects tabled in 2021 and newly staffed proposed ARPA projects. And three, authorize the city manager or designee to approve budget appropriations necessary to recognize revenue and appropriate funding for all ARPA projects. A little bit of background: on March 11, 2021, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, into law. As part of the law, the city has been allocated $59.5 million in ARPA funding from U.S. Treasury. We've received half, about $30 million, and the second half is expected to arrive in May 2022. And the funding represents a unique and rare opportunity for the community as it recovers from the effects of the pandemic. In May 21, shortly before the city received its first allocation of ARPA funding, U.S. Treasury released preliminary guidance on the use of funds, and they called that the interim final rule. A lot of the guidelines in the interim final rule were incomplete. And on January 6th of this year, Treasury released its final rule, which aims to provide greater clarity, direction, and examples for rules already in effect under the interim final rule. Beginning in July of 21, Council started the process of deliberating and selecting which ARPA projects to fund with the city's $59 million allocation. That initial process that the city started yielded Council selecting and appropriating $48.2 million worth of ARPA projects. And all ARPA projects must either be encumbered by December 2024 and then completed by December 31st of 2026. So there is a timeline to spend down these funds from U.S. Treasury. The replacing lost public sector revenue category of ARPA remains the most flexible spending category. It provides governments like the city broad latitude to use the funds to provide general government services with very few restrictions. Examples of general government surfacing, infrastructure and maintenance, public safety, payroll, and other administrative costs. Funds under this category can be spent by a local government using an amount up to that local or state government's revenue loss figure. And U.S. Treasury provides a calculation that they want recipients of ARPA funds to use to determine a local government's revenue loss. And whatever that revenue loss is, that's the amount that you can spend ARPA funds on for general government services. As part of the calculation formula, we have to start from a base year, or the last fiscal year before the onset of the pandemic, which was fiscal year 2018-2019. As part of the guidance from U.S. Treasury on the revenue loss calculation, we have to calculate at 4 distinct points in time, either at the end of each calendar year or fiscal year. So the city's doing a calendar year calculation. So every December 31st for years 2020, 21, 22, and 23, we have to do our calculation. And using guidance from the final rule, the city had a general revenue loss at the end of 2020 of $16.5 million. For the period ending December 31st, 2021, that revenue loss was $4.7 million. And then the projected general revenue loss at the end of this calendar year, 2022, is estimated to be $12.3 million, which total together, the total general revenue loss due to the pandemic since December 2020, using U.S. Treasury's calculation, is projected to be $33.6 million. The recategorization of ARPA funds. So after council meetings of September 21st, 2021 and December 7th, 2021, council selected and then appropriated $9.2 million worth of projects in the replacing lost public sector revenue category. With the approval of the recommended action tonight, the city will elect to recognize an additional $23 million in the ARPA funds to the replacing lost public sector revenue category. The reason why we're doing this is so we can repay the general fund or other city funds for the general government services such as street resurfacing, infrastructure maintenance that the city has already spent funds on or will shortly. The recategorization of 23 million includes newly recategorized projects, which is about 15.7 million on the green section on attachment 3. There's new staff proposed projects, which is about 3.3 million in the yellow section on attachment 3. And finally, projects that council had previously tabled in the replacing lost public sector revenue category, about 4 million, which is items 51 and 52 in the orange section on attachment 3. So coupled with 9.2 million that council already categorized into that revenue loss category, this action will categorize a total of 32.2 million, which is the 9.2 from 2021, and then the 23 million that is recommended tonight into the lost public sector revenue category. So what this will do, it will effectively free up city funds to fund the ARPA projects previously approved by council, but most importantly, without the fast approaching deadlines to encumber funds, which is December 2024, since the projects will be completed using regular city funds instead of ARPA dollars. It's important to note that ARPA projects that council appropriated and are now proposed to be recategorized will still be funded and completed, but under the recommended action with newly available city funding and with more realistic deadlines. Let's give an example of a recategorization project, which is item 8 on attachment 3, which is seed money for park shade structures. Staff is proposing to recategorize this project because this particular project is proposed to be completed as needed and when certain parks receive upgrades or repairs to their equipment or changes to their layout. Due to the nature of this project and because the timeline for completing it is variable and based on park needs, there's an unknown timeline. So staff is proposing to recategorize this project. Another example is the Olympic Skate Park in Colonia, item 33. This is a very unique project, and unlike typical construction projects, this Olympic certified skateboard park requires a partnership with World Skate from start to finish. They're the world certification body based out of Switzerland. That this is their thing. They are the only one that can certify Olympic skateboard parks. They have a pretty elaborate system. It's a 9-stage qualification system, and it contains 46 separate components from application to certification. The city is currently in stage 1. We've had an initial interview with World Skate, and we're going to have a second one sometime in the spring between the city and World Skate. Regardless of the certification, it's important to note that the city does intend to build an Olympic quality skate park. Further, Public Works Division, Public Works Engineering Division, they're currently managing over 100 funded capital projects, and with the new ARPA projects the council approved, which there are approximately 40 of them, it represents a 40% increase in their project management workload. And so under the weight of that current workload, it'll be challenging to complete all the division's ARPA projects on time, especially the timeline that ARPA outlines, even with the added project managers that council previously had approved. Not all projects will be categorized under replacing public sector revenue loss. Since December 7th, 2021, when council appropriated the funds, staff has gotten underway on some of the council approved projects and is planning to begin work on the balance of other projects shortly. For example, the fire department has purchased supplied air respirators. They funded the Fire Catch-Up Academy and began purchasing personal protective equipment, or PPE, for city staff. The city manager's office has executed contracts to support the city's tourism industry as well as businesses in South Oxnard. And the city staff has developed the gratitude program for grocery store workers and set aside ARPA pay for city employees. Selection of table projects. During the ARPA project selection process, 73 total projects were selected and appropriated, which totaled approximately 48 million. 5 projects were tabled by council until a further discussion amongst the council would take place. And these 5 table projects total about 6.25 million. Going through the table here of the table projects, we have a citywide wayfinding program for $1 million. Heritage Square building and site enhancements and safety repairs, another $1 million. The Oxnard employee pipeline and homeless vocational programs, 200,000. A citywide campaign to paint curbs red next to fire hydrants, 250,000. And then finally, a bike and pedestrian project atop the SCR3 Levee Road north of the River Ridge Golf Course between Ventura Road and Victoria Road for 3.8 million. These 4 projects on this slide are newly proposed ARPA projects that would also fall under the replacing public sector revenue loss category. We have the fire department drafts system for $100,000. This system will aid the fire department's training efforts while helping the city save 7.5 million gallons of water on average every year. We have a city library technology upgrade for $445,000, a PD mobile command post for $750,000, and finally the Ventura County Family Justice Center Oxnard expansion for $2 million. The Family Justice Center provides victims of crime a welcoming community that both empowers and supports survivors of all ages and their families through comprehensive and holistic services. The center uses strength-based practices to end abuse and exploitation, pursue justice, and create pathways to hope for affected residents in Ventura County. Residents in the city of Oxnard are already greatly benefited by the center. In fact, between March 2019 and November 2021, the center has actually assisted over 1,900 Oxnard residents. So this represents, a third of the center's clients, and they provide valuable services to survivors of criminal violence. For the financial impact, to summarize, the city has been allocated $59.5 million in ARPA funding. We have received half, $29.7 million in May 2021. That has been deposited into Fund 276, and we are expecting the remaining $29.7 million to arrive in May of 2022. If council approves all the projects as listed, a total of $57.7 million worth of ARPA projects will be selected out of $59.5 million made available by U.S. Treasury. During the life of the ARPA funding, staff will have the opportunity to ask council to update the various budgets based on actual costs as the projects begin. The action tonight would leave about $1.8 million in unappropriated ARPA funds. Approval of the recommended action will also authorize the city manager or designee to approve the budget appropriations necessary to recognize revenue and appropriate funding to newly selected ARPA projects. And project numbers will be assigned to each specific ARPA project council selects for tracking and federal reporting purposes. Finishing off where we began with the recommendation, City Council, 1, recategorizes $15.7 million of ARPA projects into the replacing lost public sector revenue category, according to the final rule issued by U.S. Treasury. 2, make final decisions on remaining ARPA projects tabled in 21 and newly staff proposed ARPA projects. And 3, authorizing the city manager or designee to approve budget appropriations necessary to recognize revenue and appropriate funding for all ARPA projects. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.